So I welcome all of you, and I hope that all of you will come next Sunday night at 6 o'clock to witness our graduation online. We will be giving a doctorate to Stephen Pilch, who is in the School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. And we will also be giving an honorary alumni award to Ernie Collins to recognize his 40 years as part of the Gratz family. I would now like to introduce Dr. Monica Rice, who is the director of our Holocaust and Genocide Studies program and an assistant professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies in our MA and PhD programs. Monica is a native of Poland. She did her undergraduate degree at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, Poland, and then she later did a PhD in Judaic Studies at Brandeis University. She teaches a number of courses on the Holocaust for us. Her first book, What's Still Alive, is a book about Jewish survivors and how they remembered the Holocaust when they returned to their homes in Poland after the war. She has since published other academic work and also publishes in some more non-academic popular media, which I think is very important because part of our goal at Gratz is to both be a strong academic educational institution, but also share what we do with a larger community. And so many of us at Gratz try to reach out both to traditional academic journals, but also to more popular journals that reach a larger audience. And so with that in mind, I would like to introduce Dr. Rice to you and let Monica take it from here. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Dr. Filkelman, and thank you, Naomi, and thank you everybody for coming in tonight to hear one of our exquisite students. I have the privilege of directing Holocaust and Genocide Studies program at Gratz College, and I need to tell you that our program is unique for several reasons. First of all, we were the first to offer programs in this discipline online, beginning with graduate certificate in 2007, then with master's program in 2012, and in 2017, Gratz launched the very first PhD in the discipline of Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and it is also the very first such program in PhD, on PhD level online. I am proud to say that our program is booming. We are experiencing an unprecedented number of inquiries and applicants, and currently well over 100 students, graduate students, pursue their degree in our program. These unusually high numbers are a testimony that our world needs well-prepared Holocaust and Genocide Studies educators and researchers. It is also a testimony that our program is at the front of this education, providing excellent professors, a wide range of courses, and very attentive mentorship to people who devote their lives to studying and teaching about one of the most horrific events in history. We pride ourselves on delivering a very diverse curriculum. I would say more diverse than other programs are able to provide, and on being able to provide top-notch experts in the field to teach just what they know best. What is most rewarding and exciting about our program is the quality, passion, and engagement of our students who sacrifice their free time, their weekends, summers to pursue this study in order to assure that Holocaust will be known and taught accurately. That is better than it has been taught up to now. It is therefore my utmost pleasure to welcome one of our exquisite students, Melissa Mikel, who took the matter of Holocaust education very personally and made it her life project. Melissa is a graduate of our master's program in Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and she has just been accepted to our PhD program. She is a director of education at the Simon Wiesenthal Center of Canada, as well as a book author of a Holocaust story for young readers. Melissa, welcome from Ontario, Canada.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this tonight.
It's great to have you here, and it's great to hear your story and hear how you approach Holocaust education, what can be done with it, and really why Graz, why pursue it at Graz. So could you tell us a little bit, how did you become interested in Holocaust studies? How did you get into this area?
Sure. Well, it's actually an interesting story. So I grew up on a dairy farm in rural Ontario, which usually when I start an answer like that, I get the question of how on earth did you end up then, in this field? Probably as far removed as anyone could be from Holocaust and genocide studies. But my entry was actually through the Second World War. So I had two great uncles who fought in the Second World War. One survived, the other passed away, died in the Battle of Ortona. And that, I guess, really was my entry point. We were never able to speak to my Uncle Gord about what the experience had been. We were warned not to because it was too difficult for him. They'd been on the same battlefield when my Uncle Tom had been killed in action. And it was just felt that it was too difficult for him to recount those stories. So I guess as a young person being told, don't ask questions, can't talk about it, it kind of drove that curiosity. And I got my hands on whatever I could to read, about that history and to learn about that history, which, to be very honest, in a, rural Ontario public school in the 1980s, there wasn't a lot of literature, but I had a wonderful librarian when I was 12 years old, and I actually have a copy of the book still. She gave me a copy of a book called The Upstairs Room by Johanna Rice. And it was a fictional story about two Jewish girls who hid in the attic during the Second World War. And she said, if you like this book, come back and I have a second one for you. So I devoured that book, and really it became the introduction, I guess, to the story aspect, to the testimony aspect, because the next book that she gave me was a diary of Anne Frank. And that really set me off on a course where anything I could get my hands on, with regards to Holocaust, that was the direction I ended up going in. And then there were just certain points, along my own, I guess, educational journey. I attended Trent University for my undergraduate degree, and there was a professor there who had studied at Bletchley Park. So again, the World War II aspect, he, was very much an advocate for code breaking as being the way that the Second World War came to an end. And he offered a study course where you could look at all different perspectives from the war. So again, my focus was on Holocaust and looking at perpetrators, victims, bystanders, and just through that, all of those different lenses. So just some really unique experiences, I guess, along the way that started with a family connection and that personal, connection to that history, and then kind of ventured into the Holocaust. You can't study that period of World War II without coming across, of course, the Holocaust. So.
It's fascinating. You are kind of improbable candidate to be interested in it, as you admitted, as I am, as many people are. We often, as people who do not have necessarily family personal connection to the Holocaust, get often asked, why would you? But there is this greater historical context and the context of a place you live in. And I think especially the kind of enforced silences is something that may provoke us to want to dig and to discover and want to know why. Like in my case, in Poland, the obvious question was, why don't we talk about the Jews who were 10% of population before the war and they disappeared and nobody wants to mention them? So very similar to your story of the uncle, who people didn't really want to discuss the personal experiences for different reasons, but a similar kind of a provocation, right? Something that prone you to want to know. That's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. From there, from studying, pursuing then a Holocaust subject more academically, reading, writing, specializing in it within your degree of education, how did you then progress to becoming activist in a sense, or educator yourself? What prone you to want to affect change in Holocaust education, and how did you go about that? Because I know you did. You are extremely active in this field, and I would love you to tell us about it more. What specific things you do, and why are they why are you doing them? Why are they so important, and what is lacking in what's you know, in the Holocaust education nowadays that you hope to fulfill, to make up for? Yeah.
Sure. So my entry was actually through teaching. So I knew from a very young age I wanted to be a teacher. And to be honest, everything with regards to Holocaust and World War II was really personal interest. I didn't necessarily see a connection right away because it was an elementary school teacher that I wanted to become. And unfortunately in Ontario, there's not a lot of curriculum connections for Holocaust.
Yeah.
It's improving, but it's certainly not where it needs to be just yet. So I was fortunate that I taught at a small private school and had a principal that said, if you want to teach Holocaust, you can, just make sure you find those connections and you make it relatable to the students. Mm-hmm. And a number of the students that we were working with, it was a private school, but we dealt with a lot of marginalized students, kids who had become very disenfranchised with learning. There's not a lot of alternative education opportunities where in the particular area where I was living. So we had a very vast, I guess very typical of a normal classroom. And what I found with Holocaust education was it was something that bridged all of the different learners. So, you know, one of the stories that I love to tell is a young man, he came to us in grade 7, so 12 years old, and couldn't read or write, was functionally illiterate, and had very, very angry experiences with regards to education. And when we started teaching Holocaust, it was just like a light went off with him. And his mom continually kept coming in saying, I don't know what's going on, but every day he's getting up and he wants to come to school. And his goal for that school year was to be able to read a book called I Am a Star by Inga Auerbacher. And who's a survivor. And it's, you know, a small novel, but it was his goal for the year. And he actually achieved that. He was able to sit down and independently read that by the end of the year. So, you know, we did a lot of soul searching as to, well, what was it about this? And I still don't know if I actually have the answer, but what I did see was you had kids who all of a sudden were very engaged in learning. And so we continue to teach it year after year, mostly through children's literature, because that particular area with regards to Holocaust has completely exploded in the last 10 to 15 years. And what it actually led to was us finding out about the Whitwell, Tennessee, the paper clips project that was going on in the school in Tennessee. And I guess very naively, we showed the documentary to our students because there was such interest. And of course, as soon as we turned the screen off, the question was, well, what can we collect? And so admittedly now we began very naively into this project where one of the students came back and said, why don't we collect pebbles? And, you know, cited, of course, the significance to the pebble on a Jewish headstone. And again, I guess I should mention, not a Jewish population at all. I think we've had one student in the history of the school that I was at that had been Jewish, you know, over the number of years. So again, a community that wasn't very knowledgeable about what it meant to be Jewish. So it opened up a lot of doors for us to be able to open that dialogue. And when I say we began that project very naively, I realize now the controversy that comes around running projects like that and the risk that you run in simply collecting a number of objects, how that can really diminish the history of the Holocaust, because you're counting numbers again. You're not you know, personalizing what those numbers represent. Now I do, you know, through the project, to collect 6 million pebbles, where do you begin? We made it a letter writing project for the kids. So they had to write out to whoever they wanted to. So we wrote to politicians and authors and celebrities, and we had articles featured in newspapers. And what started happening, which really helped us to make sure we didn't lose the significance of what we were doing, was we had letters coming in from individuals who donated pebbles and identified who those pebbles represented. So one letter in particular came from someone, they were anonymous, they never identified who they were, but this person's family had lived in Belgium and they had actually rescued or had tried to rescue Jewish refugees in their country. And two individuals had actually been arrested from their home. And so this person donated 2 pebbles to Jackie and Michael. And this person remembered their name because when they were arrested, they'd actually ended up in a transit camp, and Jackie and Michael had sent a letter back to them. There had been a very minimal communication, and there's no idea as to what happened to those people. We didn't know their last names, but for the kids reading that letter, it became a very tangible memento, a very tangible piece of history, because it was no longer just pebbles that were coming in, they represented people. But again, significantly with the knowledge that I've learned through Gratz is the importance of making sure that those stories are attached to that history, and that it's not just numbers, it's not just a statistic that we're studying. There's that personal side to that history. So we were lucky in the sense that, very early on we connected with stories. We also had a Polish political prisoner who lived nearby. And he was actually the first survivor from that period that I had met. He'd spent 5 years in Dachau and came into the students. So we did start with that storied approach and that personal connection. And interestingly, it was actually that program that led into me leaving the school and taking a position at the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center in Toronto as Director of Education. And really it's through that area, as well as, of course, my education at Gratz, that has just allowed, I hope, my impacts to really, expand tremendously. Back in 2010, we decided to start traveling actually to sites of the Holocaust in Germany and in Poland. And the groups that we traveled with were chiefs of police, directors of education, politicians, authors from all across Canada. So the idea was to take leading figures in different fields to these sites to stand on the grounds, because what we were finding was the education really hasn't been there. It hasn't been there in the past, and we're still struggling to really gain the level of education that's necessary to have a good understanding of Holocaust, to make sure that those memories continue on. And so it's a program we call Compassion to Action. We started traveling with these groups. We have a survivor that we travel with, Max Eisen. Is an award-winning author, published his memoir in 2016. It actually was just released in the US. I think it was just this past year, by chance alone was released, but he was in Auschwitz, 15 years old. He was arrested as a Hungarian Jew and sent to Auschwitz, and managed to survive. So as we walk those grounds with these chiefs of police and with these directors of education, you have him standing, and we get to crematorium too, where his family, his baby sister, 2 brothers, and mother were murdered in that gas chamber. And he tells that story. And interestingly, with the chiefs, as we've traveled, they're of course connected to their communities. And we've had a number of them, as we've been standing on the grounds, who have received messages from home about anti-Semitic incidents that have happened in their communities. And without fail, they've said, this has left a lasting impact on them. And they all of a sudden have a greater understanding of why they need to act and the significance behind that swastika. It's not just a piece of graffiti. That the hatred that roots that on has to be stopped now. Which then led, of course, because of these trips, into our police training that we've been doing through the center in Toronto as well. So we, that's kind of been the next step, right, is to make sure that the lessons that we travel with the leaders within these communities, we also offer programs for their services as well, to be able to educate on the ground in Canada and hopefully inspire them to continue traveling overseas as well.
That is a really fascinating story, and the activities that you didn't mention them all, your story for young readers and all the training that you do currently is really fascinating. Could you tell us briefly, because we are right now, we will be wrapping up soon, but can you tell us how Gratz education, all the Gratz courses that you took, professors, mentors that you met, how did they enrich, informed, directed you to make what you do now, to affect your education of, pushing this education further down and make it something that is definitely life-changing, but it's not the kind of slogan like never again education, but it's something that really is going to impact people, first of all with the with the knowledge, and then with what can be done about danger of future and current genocides that are actually obviously occurring, but in a deep sense, not in this kind of superficial way that sometimes Holocaust education, unfortunately, may happen. Could you tell us about why Graz? What is special about the program?
Well, I hope I can do it justice, first of all, because I cannot stress enough the important role that Graz has played in my own education and in the way that I approach Holocaust education and everything that I do. And the motivation, I think, that I feel too, to be able to continue to pursue these studies, and I guess the urgency behind that. So first of all is the accessibility of the program, and that within an international context. So yes, it's online. Yes, it opens up, a tremendous amount of opportunity for us, but it's the understanding that I actually learned about the program on a training session that I was in at Auschwitz State Museum. So it was one of the professors during that week-long training who mentioned Graz and, kind of sparked my interest, and I started looking into it. But it's the fact that we automatically, by being part of this program, have access to an international community. Our professors, who I really, having had the opportunity to work with a number of different professors from, a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different school settings, top-notch educators through Graz. I can't stress that enough. As well as a student body as well, where we have international students. And again, I know we've talked about this before, but you can have that sitting in a classroom. But, right now in my PhD course that I'm taking, I have, students in South America, students in Israel, students in Europe, students in the US, in Canada. So there's this real international aspect, and I can't stress enough the importance of the value of those different lenses and the perspectives that brings to the learning in the classroom. And again, that's both from students and from professors. The breadth and depth of knowledge, again, we've had access to, traditional classic historical Holocaust scholars, Raoul Hilberg, Saul Friedlander, right through to, contemporary scholars. So the Timothy Snyders and the Wendy Lauer and Samuel Totten. So, again, within this small school setting, we have this incredible depth of knowledge that we learn from, that we are encouraged to think critically about, to communicate with each other about, and take that theoretical foundation and apply it to our practical application. So, how do we take these learnings and how do we apply it to our own areas of work, and then sharing that within our community and getting feedback and, other ideas coming in with how we can implement what we're learning. And finally, the diverse curriculum. Again, for a small school, the variety in the courses is absolutely outstanding. My primary focus, of course, is Holocaust, and that, I tend to go to a lot of the Holocaust courses, which there's an incredible selection, but the other genocides that are covered within this program as well are absolutely phenomenal. I really can't speak highly enough about the Graz program, the quality of education, the support from faculty, the support from colleagues within the team. Dr. Rice, you've been phenomenal, as a leader, I think, amongst that community. Certainly you've created this incredible community from the start with our PhD cohort going through, having just started this program. And, just to speak to, kind of the donor piece as well. I couldn't do this program without the financial support of donors of Graz College. So eternally grateful for the experiences, for the opportunity to work with incredible scholars and colleagues. It's an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful to be where I am and to have this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This was really an excellent excellent testimony to what we are trying to do, and your own activity is a testimony to, you know, what can be done online when you have access to, you know, to experts and can study and have passion to do that. So thank you so much. This was really excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for such a thoughtful and interesting conversation. This was really, really wonderful. And coming all the way from Toronto, we're just glad Zoom held up today, because it actually crashed this morning. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for that. But thank you for all the time and thought you put into preparing for tonight. We're just really blessed to have students like you and faculty like you, Dr. Rice. So I just want to say a quick thanks to everybody who's here with us tonight for joining us. I'm going to quickly, before we run out of time, share my screen in case you weren't with us in the beginning. Just want to, let me get this together here. Show you the schedule for the remainder of the webinars coming up tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday night. We have 3 more webinars to go. They're all on very different topics, and that's sort of the point, is to show all of the diversity of programming at Gratz. Just a wonderful range of programs and students as well. So we have a student, an alumnus speaking tomorrow evening, who has deep roots at Gratz, going back to his family. And so I hope you'll join us for that. And then Wednesday, going out to the West Coast, we are speaking to Elizabeth Christie, who is an alumna of our nonprofit program. And she's going to talk to us about regenerative farming in Los Angeles in an urban environment. And then Thursday, we're going to wrap with an alumnus and current adjunct instructor in our education program, and also a K-12 teacher in Pennsbury, which is a local school district here in Pennsylvania. And he's going to be speaking to people like me who have kids who are learning remotely, and we're pulling our hair out. So if you have kids at home, or you're a teacher yourself and you want some great strategies, I hope you'll join us for that on Thursday. And then we're going to break until commencement on Sunday, the big day, and everybody is invited to join us on August 30th, Sunday at 6 o'clock. If you go to our website on the commencement event page, you will see a link, and at 6 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday, you can join us for this live stream event. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. And then my last note, and thank you, Melissa, for talking to us about your experience as a recipient of scholarship, because that is really what this whole campaign is about supporting our students like you for success. And so we ask that if you feel so moved, that you buy a virtual seat for our commencement. Of course, there's no cost for commencement, but this will help support our scholarship funds, and also show your support and celebration, and to sort of join in the celebration of our students who are graduating this year. So I will make sure that everybody receives an email with a link if you haven't already participated in this. If you have, thank you. There is a link at the bottom of the screen here, and we encourage you to all participate and sort of fill our virtual auditorium on Sunday. So with that, I wish you all a wonderful evening. Again, thank you for coming tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much,
Thank you,
everybody.
Naomi.
Stay
Thank you,
well.
Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Melissa, again. Thank you, Naomi. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.